introduce our guest, Deborah Benaim. She's a Venezuelan-born chef and owner of her own catering company, DB Catering. Deborah is also a former chef at Spago Beverly Hills, Wolfgang Puck's legendary flagship restaurant. Her extensive traveling has given her experience with many cuisines, and she accommodates many diets, including kosher, gluten-free, and otherwise. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you for coming. I'm always shocked at how much butter they use on those cooking shows when they're preparing vegetables and steak. Being that you're a restaurant and catering expert, can you tell us what other foods to look out for sneaky butter and fat?
Okay, chefs, we love butter. Butter is like the ultimate tool in the kitchen. I would say the biggest thing is risotto. Risotto is one of those things that we love to just add chunks and chunks of butter because it adds that creaminess. The arborio rice is already very creamy, but there's really nothing like the essence of butter for that dish. So I would say that, there's certain things that butter enhances. Another thing is steak. Steak
right.
Basted in butter because it really gets into those nooks and crannies, and gets that really crispy outer layer.
It's so funny because home cooks, I don't find to even think about using butter with steak, but on those cooking shows, it's like.
I mean, I could go into the scientific process of why it works and why, but it's one of those things. So if you're really looking out to sort of be a little more conscious about your weight or, your health, I would look out for dishes like that.
Okay, good. That's a good one. I would not have thought about the risotto. So for some home cooks out there, are there any spices or other cooking methods you can recommend that add a lot of flavor without needing as much fat?
Yeah, definitely. I remember in my first stage, and in the restaurant world, that means when you kind of go into that, kitchen for the very, very first time and you're young and the chefs come to you and try to mentor you. And one of the very first things that he taught me in Dallas was that there's this thing called umami, and umami packs a whole lot of flavor. Umami can be found in things like soy, nutritional yeast, garlic,
and what's the
mushrooms.
Definition of umami for
umami,
those who don't know?
It's kind of like that sixth sense. It's that flavor profile you quite can't put your finger on, that you kind of are trying to describe to someone else, but you can't find the right words.
It's a sense of savoriness a little bit, right?
Very savory, correct. And also very, otherworldly, in my opinion. What does a mushroom taste like a mushroom? Tastes like a mushroom. Is there anything else in the world that tastes like a mushroom? No. So that has a lot of umami. Same thing with soy. That's how I guess I would best describe it.
And so that helps in replacing fat?
Definitely helps in replacing fat. It helps in packing in a lot of flavor. I think fat is important for cooking, technique-wise, but you don't have to have, fat in order to have a wonderful meal that has a lot of flavor and, is really something that you look forward to eating at the end of the day, when you come home from work. So
maybe like when making a stir fry, more soy sauce and maybe mushrooms in the mix.
Correct.
I would do that.
Rather
So much oil.
Yeah, or a lot of herbs. I often make Vietnamese rolls, and it's very high in protein, very low in fat, and that's because you've got your tofu, whatever you decide to put in protein-wise, and for flavor, herbs. Herbs are amazing. Fresh herbs. You've got mint, you've got basil, chives, scallions, anything. You put all of them in there, and I guarantee you won't miss out on the peanut sauce. You won't miss out on all of the fatty components that
sounds amazing and super healthy. Anytime you get your greens in. That's
come over to dinner anytime.
Okay, I'll take you on that. In terms of salt, everyone knows that restaurants tend to pack a punch. So why do restaurants use so much salt, and how can you go around that if you wanted to?
So I'm going to tell you a little secret.
Okay.
The reason why we use so much salt is because we become immune to salt. It's
interesting.
Yeah, after so many years of cooking, the more salt that you ingest, the less, you taste it. And so when I first started at Spago, for example, I would see all the chefs coming around and saying, Deborah, this needs more salt, this needs more salt. And I was like, oh my God, it's already salty. Like, are you crazy? And, after a while, I realized what was happening was that they were just losing their ability to taste that salt. So when we put out a dish and the client comes in and has it, most of the time it's at that perfect level. For some people, it might be a little more salty, and that's the reason why.
That's a really great point, because some of my clients who have renal disorder or some other issue where they have to lower their salt, it's so hard for them at first. And even personally, when I was trying to wean down my salt intake, it does take getting used to, but then I find it is about training those taste buds. So I guess you could train them one way or the other.
I would say the same with sugar, and
Definitely.
you start cutting out sugar, you realize that some desserts are sweeter than you ever imagined.
Totally.
So,
Always a good thing to wean down on sugar. And I tell my clients, you're not going to feel shaking, but it will feel like some sense of withdrawal and the difference of taste, for sure. So as a private caterer in Beverly Hills, have you ever had any wacky requests or dietary suggestions?
As a chef, I'm always looking for that creative edge, and for me, I want to go in there and create my avant-garde, dish, and put out something that creates that facial expression that everyone wants. Oh, what is this? I have no words to explain what I just ate, and I haven't had really wacky requests, but a lot of limitations, and that as a chef is very difficult. At the end of the day, I am there for them and to cater to them, but it's difficult when you get requests like low sodium, no soy, and at the end of the day, they're asking you to make Asian food.
Right.
So you say to yourself, Asian food without soy, that's, like peanut butter without jelly. How do you, it just doesn't work.
So what's if someone is allergic to, let's say, like peanuts, or like what's a good example of how you can circumvent the situation and make people with intolerances, enjoy food and not have to feel left out?
I try to do my research. I try to go online. I try to see if there are any sort of components that other chefs have found that work in those similar situations. If it's a dairy intolerance, or if it's low sodium, or anything, even the most intricate detail that you may never have heard of. I have yet to experience that, but it happens. And just do my research and see how I can best cater to them.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, being that you have such a diverse background, I know there's like Israel, Morocco, Venezuela, like there's so many countries in your repertoire and your travels. What are some of the flavor profiles that you tend to go to more often? More often,
I like Moroccan and Spanish. If I could eat Spanish food every single day of my life, I would. I love the culture of tapas style eating. I think that having family and friends around and small dishes and sort of like, making the time about conversation and kind of like eating small little bites. You don't feel so full afterwards. You feel able to get up and go on with the rest of your day.
That's a great point. So tapas bars can be either really great for someone trying to control their weight, or it can be kind of a nightmare. So if there are, let's say, 4 people at the table, how many tapas dishes are really appropriate so you don't overdo it and go home feeling like you overdid it?
Well, if you go to Spain, for example, you'll see that people, it's not like America where you eat and you go. Eating is a culture over there. Eating, people sit down and they'll really lend 2 hours to doing that. So they'll start off with, maybe there's 5 people at the table, start off with 2 or 3 things. Let's try these cheeses, some olives, a little wine. Then let's kind of see how that, feels.
Very different from the average American who sits down and
scarfs
orders
it down
all over the place.
Exactly.
So that's a really good tip, is that, sit down, maybe start, like if you have 5 people, minus 2 that.
Correct.
For 3, start there, see how you feel, and then go from there.
I mean, you know best. It takes probably 20 minutes for your body to register
absolutely.
Anything, right? So I think it's all about sort of gauging that and knowing your own body and knowing, when to stop. And, hey, I'm a chef. I'm all for flavor and for enjoying, and, even eating things that you probably shouldn't, but in moderation and,
And that's what I was telling Deborah before the segment, is it's so impressive to me when a chef can make such delicious food and cook it in a healthy way, because that shows the true talent of cooking. If someone makes something with so much butter and so much butter and so much salt and so much fat, I don't look at that as an art. I look at that as like, duh, with enough bacon and butter, it's gonna taste good.
Exactly, trying to compensate for something else.
But when you can really work the spices the way you do, it's really the talent. So thank you so much for coming
my pleasure,
on
really.
today.
Thank you so much.
And those are some really, really good tips that we can use when trying to control our weight next time we go out. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
For more on living healthy, living well, be sure to subscribe to emPOWERme.tv. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.